This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. I want to talk more about what happened in Maui. I'm hesitant sometimes to talk about direct energy weapons, DEWs, because I believe that that's the next thing, or that's a topic that's just going to be completely censored. That the algorithm's just going to read about it and it's just going to automatically flag the video. But I decided that I'm going to cover it anyway. I can't in good conscience not cover it because I know a lot of young kids out there and teenagers don't know about it. And I even know people who are older don't even really know about it because these aren't things that are mentioned in the mainstream while they distract everybody with laptops and indictments and all this other nonsense that's going on. Men could have babies. Or we've allowed our own government to weaponize themselves against what we believed was a boogeyman in existence, right? We always thought, oh, our government, we're putting all our tax money in, and the government's building this big military to protect us from Russia, from China, from whoever could be an enemy, Al-Qaeda, right? The Taliban. And meanwhile, what they were really doing while everybody was just enjoying their life peacefully was building a military to weaponize against us. And of course, they're going to use another boogeyman to blame it on, which is the climate. So before I get into what it is and why you should know about it, this is a good time to subscribe to my other channels now, because if I get a strike, I won't be able to upload for 2 weeks, possibly get terminated. That's just the way it goes. So please sub to those channels below now. I know a lot of you are sub to the one and not the other. Make sure you sub to the secondary one, the Uprising Revival, because the one channel does have the proper watch hours, but I did submit my application and they rejected it, so I have to wait 30 days and do it again because that's just how unbelievable they are. But they're unbelievable. I mean, this is a communist regime. This is something that they've been building and preparing people for with brainwashing throughout, the last decade or so. Really specifically, they've beaten climate change into people's heads so bad, so many times, that now people are just kind of casually just going, oh, it's climate change, right? They're just, oh, Maui, oh, it's the climate change. And that's all done by design. I also want to let you know that I do have a Patreon. If anyone out there is interested in supporting the channel and supporting the content, obviously I've been kicked all around. And it is, I need to make time to do these types of videos. But of course, that's not something that anyone necessarily has to do. But I do have one in case anybody wants to support the work and you appreciate the work. Even $1 goes a long way. So that's linked below as well. So let's look at some of the stuff here. I talked yesterday about the 3 specific spots. Obviously, I talked about weather manipulation, which we know they have the technology to do. They have the technology to prevent storms. They have the technology to create storms. And of course, when it comes to a fire, a lot of people, can use common sense and say, well, they can easily start a fire by just lighting matches and doing that. But direct energy weapons are something that if you don't know about, it's probably the biggest thing to be fearful of. It's probably the most dangerous technology that exists, because they can easily do this, what they did in Maui, to any one of us. And they can link up on people's smart meters, which is something I'll cover in separate videos about the smart meters that they're just illegally installing on people's property and forcing them to take in. Of course, this will be their way of saying, oh, you've reached your carbon footprint. We're shutting off the electricity in your home. So use your Wi-Fi and monitor your carbon footprint all day, and if you run out of energy by 6 o'clock or you exceed your footprint, your lights are off. Kind of like prison, right? That's what this is going to be, an open prison. Where, lights out in prison, well, that'll be your house. Lights out at your house. Better have candles. Can't flush the toilet. Can't shower. That's what they're doing to society. And I can't believe that so many people don't see it and so many people are supporting it. But what they've done is they've empowered very weak people, and they've really kind of empowered the insane. So when we look at this, what do we see? Well, we see these 3 specific spots that randomly caught fire, none of them near one another. And then if you look at some of the photographs, there's a lot of trees that aren't even down. There's a lot of trees that are still up while cars are just completely melted and demolished. And if you remember in California a few years ago, the California fires that occurred, everybody then was talking about direct energy weapons, saying that there's no way that this could be a fire that naturally started by climate change or a storm or dry weather, humidity, all these things that they throw at you. And then they tell you when they try to fact check it. So this story's already being fact checked. They can't put the screenshot up. But if you look it up and you Google it, they have all the same clowns, Snoops or Snopes, just the lowest people on earth who are just, doing the bidding and getting paid for by the government. And even Twitter and social media now already is deflecting. Like already they know people are seeing it and are suspicious of it, where people who are experts on fires and forest fires are saying it's not possible for it to spread so fast and so efficiently. And I have to throw this in there because when we talk about fact checking and we talk about fake news, look at this post. This is from CNN, okay? Where a CNN anchor actually has the nerve to talk about, GOP voters. And again, I'm not a GOP voter. I'm not a liberal or a conservative because it's all fake. But GOP voters, they'll lump me in and they'll lump Christians in. They really mean Christians. Are good people, he says. They raise money for Girl Scouts. They go to church. But they believe things that would break our fact-check machine. That's a fact. Look at this.
And these are busy people. These are hardworking people. There are too many Democrats who want to say they're deplorables or, why talk to these people? There are millions of them. This is a family that literally is an economic anchor in the community. The business started in the basement, employs 80 people. The new solar company employs 15 people in a part of the country that has been devastated economically and challenged economically the last 25 years. They're good people. They raise money for the Girl Scouts. They go to church. But they believe things that would break our fact-check machine. That's just a fact. And they don't trust us. They think we're part of the problem.
Yeah. So they have a fact-check machine. A fact-check machine. And he says, and that's just a fact. So apparently this guy's the authority over facts. Whatever they tell us, we have to believe. These, of course, people couldn't be bigger propagandists in the world than what they are now. I don't think it's ever been this bad. And then the guy even says, and they don't trust us. They think we're part of the problem. Well, you are the friggin' problem. You are the ones responsible for this, and you will have the blood on your hands. Unbelievable. I mean, it's absolutely horrifying. It's horrifying, and I believe that direct energy weapons, which I'll show you right now, I believe that this is going to tie in to the national herding, the national divorce that I've been talking about. Because when they herd all the conservatives, who are they going to need to herd them? Well, they'll need Trump, right? Trump will be the only one who people will get behind, and Christians will be forced to go, even if they don't want to, because they won't want to live in liberal insanity. And then they could just use direct energy weapons all over the place when everybody's herded in these states. So I warned about Florida being a honeypot, and obviously that's getting drilled and going to continue to get drilled with hurricanes and things like that. But eventually, when you have red states, it'll just be all Christians sitting in states. So then they could just line up the direct energy weapons, which, again, by design, they created these things for globalism, for us to take us out, Christians to be taken out. And I know some of it might sound insane, some of it might be hard to grasp, but you've got to really look underneath the surface of all the nonsense that they talk about, all the distractions, and realize that they've weaponized themselves against us. So these are direct energy weapons. This is some of the content that's out there. And I'll get into the governor of Hawaii, and I'll get into some of the other stuff again with the national divorce and some of the predictive programming that's out there. But this is what it looks like. And, well, it looks like a giant friggin' laser beam, right? Where we've heard that before.
The Department of Defense spends about $1 billion annually developing directed energy weapons, such as high-energy lasers and high-powered microwaves. These weapons can disrupt or destroy their targets at the speed of light. For example, DoD has developed high-energy lasers that have successfully shot down drones, but speed isn't their only advantage. They're also less expensive per use than traditional weapons like guns and missiles. Despite those potential advantages, DoD has had trouble getting these technologies out of the lab and into service. The Army has developed a detailed transition plan to support moving these weapons into the next stages of development. We recommended that the Navy and the Air Force develop similar plans.
You've seen them in Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, and dozens of science fiction and fantasy stories. But laser weapons are just make-believe, right? Well, maybe not. Energy weapons are real, and they're a lot more powerful than the novelty laser pointers that you're probably familiar with. Though they might not look like you imagine them. Take the US Navy's LAWS laser system, for instance. This experimental 30 kilowatt solid-state laser was installed on the USS Ponce in 2014. It's a real, fully operational directed energy weapon. And while it doesn't shoot out brightly colored blasts of energy like you might have seen in movies or TV shows, this invisible laser weapon still packs quite a punch. In tests, the Navy has used it to detonate explosives from a distance, burn out the engines of approaching boats, and have even used it to shoot down small, unmanned aerial aircraft. It's not even hard to use. When the Navy first showed this laser off, Rear Admiral Matthew Clunder told reporters that anyone who could play Xbox or PS4 games could use the USS Ponce's new energy weapon with ease. And not only is it an effective, undetectable weapon, but because there's no explosives, propellant, or gunpowder, it's safer to operate than traditional weapons. It's more affordable, too. Destroying or disabling a target with a traditional missile can cost thousands of dollars, but Laws can be fired for just 59 cents per shot. And the USS Ponce's energy weapon is just the beginning. Lockheed Martin has been working to help the Navy develop its next directed energy weapon system, the high-energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance, or Helios for short. It's a 60-kilowatt laser, twice as powerful as the Laws weapon. That's not a huge leap forward in laser technology, but it's enough for Lockheed Martin to start envisioning what a true next-generation laser system might look like. From systems that integrate Helios lasers with existing radar and targeting systems to eliminate threats at sea, to developing tactical airborne laser pods that can be mounted on military jets. Although those lasers won't be designed for aerial combat, but rather to help pilots defeat surface-to-air and air-to-air missiles before they reach their targets. And truth be told, that kind of defense capability is what most directed energy weapon systems are focused on today. Not attacking targets with space-age lasers, but using them to defend against drones, UAVs, and potential attacks. And that's an idea that's been a long time coming. Back in the 1980s, the Reagan administration's Strategic Defense Initiative hoped to build a fleet of laser-equipped satellites that could shoot down Cold War missile threats. The program's ambition outstretched its technology at the time, and it was eventually shut down in 1993. But now, decades later, we're finally catching up to the idea, just on a little smaller of a scale. So, yes, laser weapons are real, though they aren't much like the blasters your favorite heroes carry around in the Star Wars films. And that's okay. Some things are more fun when they stay a fantasy.
So that's our own government talking about direct energy weapons. That's Lockheed Martin talking about direct energy weapons. So we know that they exist, right? So the problem that people have is they can't wrap their heads around the government actually doing this. They think in their head that the government is here to protect them from essentially from Russia or from China. And the reality is that they're all working together, right? So when you blame it on climate change and you start creating doing this type of targeting above the clouds, from the ocean, from tanks, you start doing this and creating fires. Well, it's already been beaten into people's heads that it's climate change. Nobody's heard about direct energy weapons except people who are awake, and that's a small amount of people, right? So automatically people need somebody to blame for it. Well, people aren't immediately going to think of their government because that'll make their heads explode. Oh, our government did that? But I'll tell you this, anybody out there who looks at our government, whether it was during Trump's regime or this one, and actually trusts these people is insane. These people couldn't be more corrupt. They couldn't be more sick. And for people out there, we always talk about it. I can't believe how sick they are. I can't believe how sick they are. Well, just realize what they do with infants. And then you realize, okay, well, for them to do that in Maui, for them to do that to innocent civilians, if they can do the things they do to infants, well, of course it's very conceivable for them to do. And this is part of the Agenda 2030. This is part of the plan. They're going to use direct energy weapons, start fires. They're going to use HAARP and start, weather manipulation. They're going to convince people of climate change, which they've subtly done. This goes back to the 60s and the 70s, and you've seen some of the Time magazine articles that I put up where the covers talk about global cooling and the ice age that was coming, and they switched it to global warming. And we've just heard about it, right? It's just quietly, they just keep going, oh, the greatest threat that we have is climate change, the greatest threat, right? And that's the repetition, and it just beat it into people's heads. So now when they start using a direct energy weapon, they want you to automatically just blame it on climate change. And we see that happening now. We see people who are just regurgitating them, telling us how hot it is in Death Valley, and oh my gosh, it's the hottest summer on record, because that's what they've heard. They've been told over and over and over. So now there's this boogeyman that they can use to get away with this. Because if civilians realize this, You know, they probably would be able to stop it in some sense. But the mind control is too thick. It's so thick that people, you know, they believe in the left right. They don't realize that they've been divided by design. That's what the old saying, divide and conquer, is. That's what they're doing, dividing and conquering. It's very clear to see, right? Order out of chaos. Who's creating the chaos? Our own government is. But what do? They point a finger at the opposite party. Oh, Republicans are extremists. Oh, liberals are insane people. Yeah, well, guess what? It's your own government pitting you against one another. And then you take into it the whole national divorce thing, like I said earlier. The only person who would be able to herd civilians into states would be Trump. He would be the only one, who we've seen publicly that could do that. So then what do you think those people are? They're sitting ducks. And then what are the liberals going to say over in their smart cities when they hear reports about fires and, fires in the red states? Well, they'll just look and they'll go, well, they didn't switch to electric. They're still using gas and stuff, so they get what they deserve. But they'll just be sitting ducks for these people. We'll all be sitting ducks for these absolute monsters. You could thank the United Nations. You can thank the World Economic Forum. You can thank all of them. Your own presidents, all the politicians that are in there. Trump, they're doing this by design. And you're going to hear Trump start to bring stuff up with the climate. I doubt he'll bring up the direct energy weapons, because that'll be a little bit much. But, this is the same guy who pushed Operation Warp Speed, and people still buy into him and believe him. They're like, oh, they switched out the potions afterwards, after Trump left office. Just crazy stuff. So then on top of that, you might remember some of the predictive programming we've seen, like Dr. Evil. We've seen all the superheroes using laser technology, right? Well, what do we know that they do? They always show this stuff in front of our faces. They always glorify these things. That's part of sigil magic. Right? So how many superheroes have used laser beams out of their eyes? You see the repetition with that? You got Superman, you got Cyclops. There's dozens of them. And Superman being the most prominent. But even Dr. Evil, right, in the Austin Powers movie, making a mockery. Oh, it sounds like the craziest plan ever. Have a laser up on the moon. Now, I'm not saying that it's up on the moon, but obviously they can use this technology above the clouds, and they can do this type of stuff on cue. And you can't prove anything. You can't, because for you to say, well, they have this type of tech and then to blame it on them, well, that makes you a tinfoil hat wearer. But you see that these people are monsters. You see their behavior. Has anybody seen, like, if you go to Joe Biden's Twitter page, it's so sickening. Like him and Obama, they're like, whoever tweets or does this to us, who has a chance to come and meet us. Like, what is this? You're the president. This is the president of the United States, supposedly, and the former president. And they're laughing hysterically. They're laughing at society. They're laughing at how they're getting away with this. The wicked are dying of laughter. They can't believe how stupid half of this country is. And the other half is, you could blame conservatives for being equally as stupid, because they're still putting their trust in Trump and not in Christ. And they need to switch that and put their trust in Christ. They don't need a guy who's a billionaire who's been rubbing shoulders with these people his entire life, including the Epstein guy, right? So we had the Dr. Evil program. We had all this programming over the years. And now we're seeing this type of stuff. And again, I fear about direct energy weapons being used in states that end up being conservative states. So there's honeypot states, right? Texas, Florida, and there's going to be more. And look, you could say, well, that's just going way down the line, or you're thinking way too far ahead, but we're getting close. All it's going to take is one catastrophic false flag to get people herded into different states, because people are at each other's throat. Everybody's miserable on both sides. They don't realize why. And they look at the other side and they're like, these people are nuts. These people are extremists. And this is all just part of mind control. It's all just part of mind control, to herd people away from one another, to divide them. And then the Christians will all be in isolated states, and not everybody who's conservative is obviously Christian, but for the most part they are. And we know that this is really what it is a war on Christianity. That's what we're seeing, because everything they're doing is to defile God. Everything they're doing with transhumanism, manipulation of DNA, it's all to defy God. So anyone out there that didn't know about direct energy weapons, I'll see if the video stays up, and I obviously can cover it in more detail with other things. I could cover, I've had videos in the past. I've talked about Tesla, obviously HARP and all that. They have false information under the video. I wouldn't be surprised if this did, or at least at some point get them one of those blue boxes that tells you it's I can't even say the word because then they automatically will flag it. But it's frightening what's going on. I mean, you look at the devastation over there. You look at what they did in California, and you realize that how does this type of technology get stopped? And it only gets stopped through Jesus Christ when our King returns. So just be aware of this stuff. Be aware of the manipulation. I know people out there are like, not everything's a conspiracy. Yeah, well, fires don't burn like that. How about the fire in in Canada? I forgot to even mention. How about that? How it made the whole country orange. Yeah, that's normal. We have formaldehyde falling, benzene from Roger Rabbit, the dip falling in the sky. I mean, nobody's suspicious, right? When's the last time there was a forest fire and 2,000 miles away, the country was, completely orange and covered in smoke? This is an operation, and the intelligence agencies, they've been set up to go after us. They haven't been set up to protect us, right? That's why we look at all these acts like the Patriot Act, all these laws and bills that have been passed to spy on us, to monitor us while they're doing all this in case anyone was ever trying to stop it. Well, now it's probably too late for humanity because we've never seen humanity so deep rooted in politics and thinking they know what, in the left and the right and, the whole agendas that are out there with, your preferences in the bedroom. I mean, it's unbelievable how they've just completely done this so quickly. And Agenda 2030, turned into Agenda 2025. At least that's what they told us. Because they tell us this stuff right to our faces. They don't care. They laugh. They mock. And if it's turned to Agenda 2025, then that would mean the false flag would come right around the election. And I would think that the most extreme thing they could possibly do is some type of false flag to, one of the two candidates, right? Because that's something, and again, they would just get shipped somewhere. Wouldn't really happen. That's something that they can use to completely rile up the nation, completely into civil unrest, which are already there, but to completely divide them, to make them say, all right, we've got to separate. Okay, these people won't go, part of it, obviously, the climate agenda is the most important thing because that's the enslavement system, right? Your carbon footprint's the enslavement system. Getting people on board with it. People, the same people who got on board with masks and everything else and were like, I'll do it for the betterment of humanity. They'll get on board with this because they won't realize what it is. And then there'll be people who refuse to. But there's also going to be people who are forced into it because they don't realize that smart meters have been thrown on, to their meters outside. And by having those on there, you're automatically submitting without your consent into this. This is them being able to say, hey, we're working with the energy companies. There's not enough energy. We have to shut you down. And that's going to all tie in with the electric vehicle, everything. And it's just going to be a massive open spaced prison that we're all living in. That's what they want to do to everyone, enslave the whole world. That's what globalism is. And that's what we're close to. It's an absolute, I mean, it's hard to watch, obviously it affects everyone. I mean, I'm not above being depressed about some of this stuff. And I know, put your trust and your faith in the Lord, but it's hard to watch. It's hard not to be angry about how just disgusting these people are, what monsters they are, as much as, you put your faith in the Lord. How do you not look at this stuff and just get, cringe and get angry? And, I deal with that all the time. And I could use prayers even now, dealing with it. Sometimes I have to take days off because I just get so worked up. But, I don't want to quit, and it's just, if you're out there and you have enemies and you have people in your life that you have feuds with, if you had a falling out with your father, your mother, your daughter, your brother, your sister, your son, this is the type of stuff when you realize that you put things in perspective, put the technology they have into perspective. And it's way more advanced than even that I showed you. And just realize that there's not, no Christian should be holding a grudge against another Christian. If you've had a fight over something in the past, maybe you didn't like, your friend's cupcakes or something. I have no idea. Maybe something happened. It's time to forgive, and it's time to, focus on the Lord. Because the earthly stuff that we go through, the earthly frustration, even the stuff that I go through all the time, it's not worth holding inside. It's not worth having Christians fighting with one another when the enemy is completely in unison with one another right now. Completely. More Christians are at each other's throats. And I get why in some cases. I see like some of these churches that support the LG, and I can't believe it. I'm just like, are they kidding me? I mean, are they joking? They're having like, these certain people there preaching, and you get angry about it. But it's, it is the time for Christians to unite. And if Christians all united together, they could probably protect themselves, their families, and the world as a whole. But really at this point, your faith has to just be in Christ and for our King to return. So I thank everybody for being here. Again, if you want to become a Patreon, that option is below. Please just make sure you sub, at the very least, to both of my backup channels, as I'll be building those out, because we know that this one will get wiped out. So thanks again, everyone, for being here. God bless all of you and your families.